Hey there, everyone. What is going on? Lauren Sisler here with AL.com. Welcome into our Week 11 SEC Insider brought to you by All South Appliance. And today I'm hanging out here in the beautiful showroom off of Lake Shore Parkway. And behind me, lots of grills galore, sales galore, ready to take home just in time for the holidays. So come check it out. Plenty to go around here. And plenty to talk about after the Big Iron Bowl game that we just witnessed here in Week 10 of the SEC college football season. Mike Rodak here to talk about it as we head into Week 11. So Alabama getting the big win, 42-13 over Auburn. Not a lot of surprises there, but of course one of the big surprises was that Nick Saban didn't coach, Sarkisian took over, and that was kind of the storyline. That was obviously the narrative going into it. And so just your thoughts overall on what you saw with a Sarkisian-led football team.
It looked the same. I mean, we were just talking before the show that it seemed like any other game this year, not only with the result on the field and in the way the team played, but just with the overall feel of the game without Nick Saban there. I mean, Steve Sarkisian tried to emulate every single thing that Nick Saban does on a game day, from getting off the bus and walking, in front of the line down the Walk of Champions, and goes right into the stadium and does his pregame walk around the field. It was a slightly different route that he took around the field, but it looked pretty similar. And then, before the game, when they walk down the tunnel and Sarkisian's at the front of the line and then turns around and then starts clapping just like Saban does. Everything was just boom, 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 just as you might expect with Nick Saban. And how much of that was Saban telling Sark to do that or Sark just doing it on his own? I don't exactly know. I do know, as we all know, that Nick Saban is certainly a creature of habit, and I'm sure that he wanted his team to have it feel as normal as possible. And, I think Steve Sarkisian did a great job in that. And, during the game, how much did it change the operation of the game? Well, I mean, going into it, like I had told people last week, I don't really know if a head coach does a whole lot during the game. I mean, certainly it's an important position and in terms of recruiting and preparing and all that, but in terms of the actual game, the decisions you make are, accepting declining penalties, calling timeouts, things like that. It's really about the coordinators calling the plays and then the players themselves. And that whole operation seemed to run really smoothly. Sark paid attention to what was happening when the defense was on the field, but also worked with the quarterbacks a lot on the bench and kind of let Pete Golding do his thing on that side of the ball. And there was never really a situation in the game where you said, man, like they need Nick Saban to make a decision right here on whether to do something or whether not to do something. And it just kind of ran smoothly. And I'm sure Nick Saban was sitting at home and thinking, man, maybe I should do this more often. It's a little bit easier. It keeps the blood pressure down a little bit, but I'm sure that he'll be, back coaching here pretty soon.
Yeah, and it kind of makes you wonder if if this would have happened a year ago when Alabama was at Jordan-Hare Stadium on the road, obviously, with 80,000+ fans, some decisions maybe a little bit more pertinent or important a year ago in that much closer matchup, much more competitive matchup with the Auburn Tigers. Certainly, it makes you wonder. And to be a fly on the wall, can you imagine being at Nick Saban's house as he's watching that game? I know he commented after the game that he was downstairs. He could hear Miss Terry upstairs screaming. He was watching the game, obviously, in his little quarantine bubble. But it would be interesting to see the commentary there. And, I said this to Matt Scalisi on Saturday. I said, could you imagine if they would have planted a black box in there to be able to hear exactly what Nick Saban was saying and doing during the game? And I would imagine that we know Nick Saban, even though it went in Alabama's favor, we know Nick Saban that nothing is ever perfect. Nothing's ever going to be good enough. So he had, I'm sure, plenty of critical things to say, and even more so as he's watching his own team. Just imagine that, watching his own team for the first time in however many years, obviously, as a head coach. I mean, that's the first time he's, I imagine, had to do that. So can't think of another time that's happened, up until now. So very, very interesting. And that kind of leads us to the next question. And actually, I'll get to that in a minute. But first, I did want to talk to you about specifically, we'll highlight DeVonta Smith. He was lights out, tremendous. Obviously, Alabama spreading the ball out, doing what they do best. DeVonta Smith having a great game. If you need a little refresher, here's a couple plays for us to roll out for you.
Mac, play action fake. Then he pumps, throws long. DeVonta wide open. He is so wide open. It's unbelievable. Touchdown, Alabama. 6 66 yards. I mean, folks, seriously.
Yeah, so just your overall thoughts. And I know there's been some discussion about, obviously Mac Jones for Heisman, but DeVonta Smith certainly making another case for himself as well. And just your thoughts on his performance and really just how the overall the offense played against, an Auburn defense that was probably one of the more difficult defenses that this Alabama team has faced in recent weeks.
Yeah, I think the most impressive part about it to me was that DeVonta Smith is doing this without Jalen Waddle on the other side of the field, or if you go back to last year, without Henry Ruggs or Jerry Jeudy. And that's, not to diminish what John Mechie can do, but I don't think defenses are worried quite as much about John Mechie as they were some of those other guys. And the fact that defenses are still focusing on DeVonta Smith and he's putting up these sort of numbers is, certainly a credit to him, a credit to Mac, and a credit to Sarkisian as well. And, he's right up there in the record book now. Obviously, we all know about the SEC record he set last week in terms of career touchdown passes, but I think Michael Casagrande ran it down this morning in terms of all the records where DeVonta Smith is either right at the top or pretty close to it in school history. And, he's going to go out as one of the best. And I think this is, again, one of the most impressive parts about it for him, because you could potentially knock him, I guess, last year for his stats and say that defenses were focused on, some of the other names at wide receiver, but there's not quite that same level right now. And he's still doing it, especially with some of the injuries they have. Slade Bolden, coming back from the ankle injury, didn't really look 100% in this game. Miller Forrestall at tight end, still not 100% either with some injuries. And so defenses can really focus on DeVonta, and he's still getting it done.
No doubt. Okay, so that leads us to the question, Nick Saban, will he coach against LSU? It's weird. We're talking about LSU. Number one, we're talking about LSU after the Iron Bowl. But number two, for the second time this year, obviously the game getting canceled before a few weeks ago. So what is the latest on Nick Saban's status for this upcoming game against LSU?
Yeah, so if you have a positive test for COVID, as obviously Saban did, it's a 10-day isolation period. And so if you count that Wednesday where that news came out last week as the first day, then the 10th day will be this coming Friday. And the exact timing of when he gets released from that isolation, I think we still have to clear up. In terms of, is it Friday morning, is it Friday afternoon, is it Saturday morning? And I think that will determine whether the travel plans are normal for Alabama. And again, you can ask some of these questions later with Nick Saban when he talks this afternoon, but it could be possible that maybe the team travels first to Baton Rouge and then Saban gets released from isolation later Friday or Saturday and then flies, on his own private jet, whatever you want to do, to get down there. And, as long as he doesn't have symptoms for the final 24 hours, if he's symptom free for 24 hours, then he can be released from that isolation. And it certainly helps that it's a 7:00 game, that gives him more time to get everything cleared up and get him down there if there is some sort of delay. But right now, it doesn't seem like there's any issue in terms of him coaching on Saturday, but during the week with their normal practices today, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, it will be as he did it last week, which was from home, watching on Zoom, whatever video feed they have, and then having somebody on the field on the phone with him, where if he sees something going wrong, then he can essentially yell at somebody through the phone, or yell to somebody, as he likes to describe, not at somebody.
Yeah, and of course those videographers got to be buttoned up real good to go on their A game for sure, so they can get all the angles. And it is worth noting what's a little bit different about Coach Saban, of course, than a player that might be coming out of isolation and or quarantine. I assume will be that he doesn't have to go through some of that testing that delays a return to the field for a player. Some of the testing that takes a couple days, to signify that they're clear, all good to go. And ready to play on the field. So unless Nick Saban's planning on suiting up, I don't think we have to worry about that. So last question for you. Alabama's college football playoff hopes, obviously still very much alive right now. Just wanted to get your thoughts on the landscape right now and sort of what that looks like, and potentially, Alabama, if we were to end the season right now, who are we looking at potentially Alabama matching up against, and who really has the best shot at this point in time? And do you even expect to see two SEC teams? I know that's another topic of conversation in that top four playoff.
It's certainly possible with the way things are going. And I think the team to watch is Ohio State because of their situation with COVID, where their game just got canceled. this past weekend, and they're right at that minimum threshold in order to play in the Big Ten championship. And if they get another game canceled, then they're in trouble as far as that goes. And at that point, is the committee going to take whoever wins the Big Ten championship? Is it going to take a Ohio State team that hasn't played a lot of games and didn't play in that title game? I think that really muddles things as far as that conference goes. And then you have a team like A&M that, at this point could very well be a one-loss team that only lost to Alabama, the best team in the country right now. And, they won't play in the SEC title game, but just like Alabama 3 years ago when they lost to Auburn, I mean, you could certainly make a case that they should be in there as the 4 seed. The only problem there is then you're talking about a rematch with Alabama, and I think you want to see a different game at that point. You want to see them playing somebody else that they haven't played yet, but that could be the way that it goes. And then certainly the Clemson Notre Dame situation might sort itself out in the ACC title game, and if Clemson takes a second loss, then they're going to be in trouble. But if they beat Notre Dame, then possibly both teams get in. So it's going to be interesting to see how this comes down. And even right now, the polls don't all agree. I think the college football playoff poll and then the coaches poll both have Ohio State as the third best team in the country, but the AP poll still has Clemson, or I could have that reversed. But the point being, the 3 and 4 aren't really decided right now. And it's hard to say who exactly their Alabama's opponent would be, with the 4 seed, and if any other conference has a shot. If the Pac-12, it doesn't seem like they're going to be there. The Big Ten maybe gets somebody in, or maybe there's even a non-Power 5 team that sneaks in. But it's a little bit less clear, I'd say, this year than it seems to have been the last few years.
All right, Mike Rodak, we appreciate it. Game kicks off, Alabama at LSU, 7 p.m. on CBS. We appreciate the insight. And, of course, we appreciate our sponsor, All South Appliance, hanging out over here in the showroom. As I mentioned before, lots of grills right here behind me on sale. Buy a grill, get a gift. Nothing wrong with that, right? Love it. Thanks so much. We appreciate you guys, and we'll check in with you guys soon.